First, I would like to welcome you in Qibla Portal in the name of Association ICSOP and Qibla. And already at the beginning, I would just like to say thank you to Civil Initiative Infocolpa, especially Miha Turk, for organizing this conference. So welcome at the Pushing Forward conference where it will unfold in 2 days. So today is the first day where we will focus on the analysis and presentations of the current conditions in the Balkan migration route. Today, first we'll have 3 panel talks, presentations and a discussion, which will be moderated by Miha Turk. Later on, there will be 2 lectures by Dimitar Anakiou and Nijara Ahmetashevic. After that, there will be a short also Q&A session. And in the evening, we will invite you to have lunch with us here. I mean, it's already dinner at that time. And after that, we'll have another discussion where I'll invite you all, of course, to participate. And for tomorrow, we will focus a bit more on the role of art and education and culture, of course, in the context of what we call the migration crisis at the moment. And we have here with us Dr. Irfan Hosic from University of Bihać, who will give a lecture where he will present also work by a Bosnian artist, Mladen Miljanovic. And Irena Boric, who is a curator and also an educator who works and leads a program which is called Seventh Voice, oziroma Sedmi Glas in Slovene language, where she will be also joined by Matvos, who is also a participant, so they will present the program. So I hope you all stay here for 2 days to join us till the end of the conference. And now, thank you all for coming, of course. And now I'll give the word to Miha, please, and he will also introduce a little bit more the first day and all the participants here today, Matej, Lucia, and Isa. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, before we start, another thank you for Qibla Portal and especially to Živa for helping us to accommodate this conference quite quickly. We had the I'm a member of Infocolpa, and so are the first panelists, Matej Zviter, Lucia Klun, and Isa Thaler. We published this report regarding sort of an expose on the actions of Slovene police in their treatment of migrants. It was very important for us that we organize this conference before the summer or as quickly as possible, as we are trying to have sort of a media campaign to, how they say, raise awareness or to create pressure and awareness about this issue. Now, the first, today is called Pushbacks, Police Violence and Criminalization of Solidarity between Sarajevo and Vienna. And the first panel will be called Documented State Violence. And besides Infocolpa, we also have a Center for Peace Studies. Madalena Von will join us, but she will be a bit later, so she will have her presentation last. And Border Violence Monitor, we have Chandra and Esar, who came from Velika Kladuša. And in all of these groups, we are involved in documenting and sort of trying to find ways how to address this issue, how to expose this issue. And this is that's why the name is Documenting State Violence, because there are ample evidence that this is happening. There are state organizations, there are international organizations who are giving testimonies, who are documenting what is happening, yet the official state policy is that there is nothing wrong, that these allegations are not true, which is the first part of the problem. That I think that because there are very, very clear evidence that this is happening, yet the police, after every report that we make or that they make, they just say, no, it's not true. And if there are so harsh evidence that these states or these authorities are committing human rights violation, it should be on them to clear any suspicion of these acts, not on these fringe groups or organizations that are collecting evidence. This is, I think, a wider issue that needs to be addressed as well. As this is not that we're not counterparts of the state. The state should have its own mechanism of mechanisms of oversight. So the first panel will they will show just exactly what is pushbacks, what exactly are pushbacks, how we tried to sort of expose this. And the second will what is happening in Croatia, and lastly in Bosnia. Now the last name, with special emphasis, will be given on criminalization of solidarity, and I think in all panels it will be shown how the state is pressuring these groups that are trying to expose these actions. And the last name is between the name of this day is between Sarajevo and Vienna, because we try to address this as a regional issue, that what is happening in Croatia, in Bosnia, is direct responsibility of our authorities, and it's direct responsibility of the policy of the European Union. Now, our claim is that police actions are not legal, but if they would be legal, it would still wouldn't make it right, as this cooperation between Croatian and Slovene authorities makes, in our opinion, makes the Slovene authorities and Slovene public directly responsible for whatever is happening to migrants in Croatia and especially in Bosnia. Now, pushbacks, that means returning migrants without a due process, without giving them even the right to ask for asylum, was practiced by Austria in 2015, and the Austrian civil initiatives organized quite quickly, and they challenged this in Austrian courts. We have a representative from border crossing Spielfeld. We have Petra Leschanz, who will make a short presentation about how this case looked like, which the Austrian authorities deemed that pushbacks were illegal. After that, Ahmed Shami from Syria will join Petra, because Ahmed was one of the plaintiffs against Austria in that case. But also, after that, we'll have another guest who is not on the schedule. We'll have a representative from PITS, which is the legal aid organization that works with migrants and asylum seekers, and they will present their work in regard to this case and in general. And after that, we'll have at 7, we'll have our guest Dimitar Anakiev, who is a physician, who worked in Kladuša, and he, among other organizations, he's part of Doctors for Asylum Seekers, Zdravniki za azilante, and they recently made a declaration that in what is happening in Bosnia is a human rights, it is a humanitarian crisis, and Dimitar worked as a physician in Velika Kladuša, and he will explain the conditions there. And after that, we'll have another guest from Sarajevo, Nijara Ahmetašević, and she will explain in detail the effect of this buildup of migrants in Bosnian society, and how, more importantly, how European Union is involved in this too. And now I give the word to members of Infoculpa, and they will present the report on the illegal practice on the Slovene-Croatian border. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Maybe just try to get this a bit bigger. No. Okay, so what you see here is the so-called graph of doom. What it shows is the blue columns are the number of people who cross the border in 2018. So the first one is January to May together, and then for each month separately. The red columns are the number of people who asked officially by police claims who asked for asylum. So you can see that from January to May, more than 90% of people who crossed the border asked for asylum, and then in June, this dropped to around 3%. This is data for police station Chernomel. So this is maybe the most extreme case, but the same the same trend happened in other police stations as well. And in general, if we look, this is the same data for January to May last year and January to May this year, and you can see that the share of people who asked for asylum as claimed by the police fell pretty dramatically. So the question is what happened here between May and June 2018. And what happened there, that is at least our guess, is that the Director General of the Slovenian police issued a decree to all police stations regarding how they should deal with migrants. Part of that decree is public. Among other things, it says that if a migrant or a group is caught by a joint Slovenian-Croatian patrol, they should be processed by the Croatian police, even if they are caught on the Slovenian territory. But probably the more important part is the redacted part, which police doesn't want to publish. Amnesty International, I think, tried to get it published, but the police denied, and now there is a court procedure going on to try to get it public. So it is evident that this is not some anomaly of 1 month or anomaly of a rogue police officer. It's evident that something systemic changed in May 2018. So that is part of the reason that led to this report that we're presenting now. Also in spring and early summer last year, NGOs and media started to report multiple cases of people claiming that they were pushed back from Slovenia to Croatia without any proper procedure, and that they asked for asylum and the police denied it or overheard it. And as a response to those reports, the Slovenian ombudsman in, I think, June last year made several visits to police stations in Metlika and Chernobyl. They found out that there was no procedure which could eliminate any doubt that the people may have asked for asylum, but the police did not hear it, which, considering that the former ombudsman was not very eager to go against the police, one could say that that is a pretty damning sentence nonetheless, because that's, I mean, the police cannot just overhear an asylum request. And what's important is that the people that are returned under a bilateral agreement between Slovenia and Croatia, and it is a very quick procedure, and they have no legal protection, they cannot appeal it. So in that context, if the police pretends that they don't hear an asylum request, the people are just pushed back to Croatia. So that was the context of summer 2018, when Infocolpa tried to then investigate this further and tried to get some cases of people being pushed back and document it with location data and stuff like that. So we established the alarm phone, which Lucia will be presenting now how it worked.
Yes. I will be presenting the alarm phone. So as Matej described, this process was happening. We were gathering more and more information about the illegal pushbacks from the migrants on the field, and also this information on the graph is. So what we ask ourselves is how to prevent illegal pushbacks on Slovenian-Croatian border and how to prove them, because we did neither. And we decided to develop an alarm phone number. It's made on example of other alarm phones mostly in Mediterranean Sea, that help migrants in distress. But our number was, first it was developed by an NGO, and it was a legal NGO, and they decided to offer legal advice or legal support to migrants that were already on Slovenian territory. What they did was they gathered their information, their names, and they sent it to the nearest police station. And they thought that this kind of monitoring would support the migrant right to ask for asylum. They did this in early July 2018, after this drop in numbers, and they used the alarm phone number for the whole summer, until in September there was a press conference with Ministry of Interior Affairs, and they accused this NGO of illegitimate activities, which was making contact with migrants and offering information to police stations. And when they accused this NGO, it came into the media, and there was some threats were made, and they were accused also of human trafficking, even though they did not have any contact with people in Bosnia and Croatia, only after they have crossed the border to Slovenia. And because of these threats, and which were quite serious, they decided to stop using the phone, and that's where our civil initiative decided to go on with the business where they stopped. So we used the number from September to November 2018. Some of our members in the group, we just switched the telephone. In practice, it looked like maybe once a day or two, 3 times a day, you would get a contact with a migrant that was, or a group of migrants that were somewhere in Slovenia. They said they wanted to ask for asylum. So we would gather their names and the ages, their country of origin. We also asked them if somebody was injured in their group, and especially if there are any minors. And we would, over mail, we send the information to the nearest police station, Ombudsman, and Amnesty International. So we were doing this for a few months. We contacted the police 20 times, but it was for 106 people. And we were hoping that if we would be monitoring the procedures, so police would know that the information about migrants is public, that they wouldn't push them back so much. Our idea wasn't quite right, because 39 of the people that we had contact with were actually accepted in asylum procedure. 29 people were pushed back to Bosnia. 1 person was pushed back to Croatia, and 39 people we never had any contact with them after Slovenian police caught them. So it could be that they took their phones, or they broke their phones, or that they just didn't want to contact us anymore. So the statistics weren't that good, but we did monitor these conversations, and we included them in the report. It's the most proof we have about the situation and how it's happening. We stopped in November 2018 for a number of reasons, mostly because it was giving false hope, and migrants were thinking that we could help them ask for asylum, but in many cases it wasn't so. So they were still pushed back, and also we didn't receive as much contact as we used in the summer and early autumn. So we just stopped with the number, and we wrote a report about it. Yes. And Isa will be talking about legal things.
Yes, thank you. So I will give a little bit of a legal perspective over what Slovenian police is doing, what Matej described. So their praxis is also at issue with the rights protected by the European Convention on Human Rights, which is an international law instrument that is to be implemented and used with direct effect in 47 states parties to the convention, amongst them Slovenia and all the other Balkan states. In Article 3, it prohibits torture, and this right also prohibits deportation of individuals to countries where they face a real risk of being subjected to torture or to inhuman or degrading treatment. And the conduct of the Croatian police, with numerous accounts of beatings, stealing or of belongings, spraying the returnees with tear gas, etc., indisputably amounts to this ill treatment contrary to Article 3. So while researching police praxis of dealing with migrants in Slovenia, we also researched some possibilities of using legal remedies to stop this illegal praxis. And what we found out is that the pushbacks are conducted without any real administrative procedure or safeguard that could result in judicial control over these proceedings. Even though in theory judicial control would be possible, it is close to impossible in practice, in that we found three main issues. The first one is the issue of lack of evidence. So there is a chronic lack of records, visual or other. In most cases, we assume there are official records of people actually entering and being detained on police stations in Slovenia, but there aren't records of individuals' claims for asylum or international protection. So basically, there are records that someone has been in Chernomel, but it doesn't say in the police records that they said, I want to claim asylum, or I come from a country where I am being prosecuted, etc. So the police forgets to write it into the records, redacts them later on, or pretends it did not hear the exact words or did not understand, etc. So because of this, it would be extremely difficult to prove that a person put forth an argument against his expulsion to Croatia, and that argument was not duly considered by a competent authority. Why did I use the term, we assume that there are these records? Because this is all we are able to do in this situation. The proceedings of the Slovenian police upon apprehension of a group happen away from the public eye without any civil supervision. So the police take people's phones, and until they are back on the territory of Bosnia, they are under total control of Slovene and then Croatian police, without any possibility of contacting anyone. The second issue is lack of legal standing to initiate proceedings. So once the migrants are back in Bosnia, they lose this so-called legal interest required to initiate a judicial proceeding in Slovenia. They would have legal standing while they are detained in Slovenia, but of course we cannot get to them, as I explained. And the third issue is of a logistical nature. So to initiate a court proceeding, there needs to be a client, an individual victim who will be available throughout proceedings that might take 5 years to complete. And for the client, it might be necessary to attend hearings and so on. So we cannot expect from a person trying to reach his family or whoever in France, Germany, or Slovenia to want to take on this role of a client in such a proceeding, or also to sue the Slovenian government while the same government is going to decide on his international protection, whether he receives it or not. So in conclusion, our research confirms that even though nominally the law is the same for everyone, in practice this mechanism is well established in a way to exclude all the persona non grata, in this case migrants seeking protection or a better life in Europe. So yeah, I think that's it.
If I may add to this sort of a recap of this presentation, thank you all of you. There's nothing really radical about what we try to do. It's just we have a very modest desire of Slovene authorities to follow the law in this regard. And it was quite interesting when the alarm phone was functioning. This was quite a big story, as the Minister of Interior had a press conference which said, and the headlines of that press conference was that non-governmental organizations are threatening police in their insistence to process individuals who call for asylum. And I would just say again what Matej already mentioned. The official line of Slovene police is still that in 1 month all the migrants on the road collectively decided that they will not ask for asylum and just would rather risk going back to Croatia or to go back to Bosnia. And recently there was a report of one magazine, and they made an interview with the head of the medicine department in Chernomel, and they said that they get many times calls from the migrants who claim desperately that they have a medical issue and if they can be hospitalized and so on. And we also see, and this is a huge issue in Slovenia, that migrants are just traveling around Slovenia on foot and just desperately trying to avoid police. And this is a huge, this is considered as quite a big problem in this. But in reality, it is that it is much better for them to, the fate that awaits them if they go to Croatia or if they go to Bosnia, it's worth, I don't know how many hardships to avoid police or even committing crime, as I imagine that if you, at least if you commit a crime, you get, a real crime, you get a better chance to stay in the country. So thank you. If you have any questions from the audience for the members of Infocolpa. Yes, Petra?
Regarding the legal procedure, is there any procedure in Slovenia monitoring police activities that don't result in an official document? I think that the best case would be the ombudsman. So they are doing some control, but until now there haven't been really damning reports, but last week there were some, so the rhetoric of the ombudsman is changing. The ombudsman changed, I think, a few months ago. It's another person now, so we are hoping that this might change the way, also with the pressure from Infoculpa, from this conference, from all the media pressure on it.
Yes, yes, Jack?
You guys talk about Chernobyl and Metlika a number of times in your presentation, but what can you say of the other police stations that are involved in this process of pushback or involuntary return? Like what other police stations would you identify that are also recurring participants in these procedures?
I think Ilirska, Bistrica and Koper, but it would, and Koper, yeah, it might be the biggest. And the way I understand, it's not, as Matej mentioned, it's the Chernobyl Police Department is the most sort of involved in this, but this, I think, on the basis of the state treaties, I think all of the border or majority of border municipalities are part of this so-called bilateral treatment, so that the way they interpret it is that they're not returning migrants to Croatia, they just have joint police patrols, and if they're caught, they're just handed over to their colleagues on the other side, to the Croats. And so we noticed that people are trying to get more and more inside of Slovenia in hopes that if they get caught or they surrender inside in central Slovenia, that they have a better chance, which is true, or it was true. But last we have, I think the last information that I have was that some individual came 20 kilometers close to Ljubljana and it was still returned as part of a joint Slovene-Croat. And then Josh Jagar will take it from here.
I know it started in Chernobyl, but what is happening in 2017, 2,000 people crossed in the whole year officially, but 49% were returned to Croatia. Last year, 9,000 people crossed, and more than, I don't know, 4,500 people returned to Croatia under the readmission agreement. This year, by the end of April, 3,000 people were crossed, and 1,800 were returned to Croatia. So the number of people who are processed under the readmission agreement is increasing last 2 years. Last year 50%, this year 60%. It's not July, August, September, October. So the share of people who are returned to Croatia is increasing every year. I don't know, this is the context.
Chernobyl was used just because it was, I think, the drop from in June was the most dramatic. In other, it was to 3%. In other police stations, I guess it was something around 10 or some indeed. But I think now it's more or less the same everywhere. Also, last year I think the migrants in Kladysza that we talked to described, or at least we got the impression that the Chernomel was the police in this area was the worst. So.
Yeah, and one last thing we forgot to mention, we also, based on our findings, we organized a petition, which you are encouraged to sign. You can get copies there, and there also, you can get, I think, a few samples of the report in physical form. We're also collecting, I think, donations. As I forgot to especially mention that after dinner, after around 8:30 or around 9, we'll have a sort of an open discussion with migrants, with individuals who are staying in asylum home or got status and are sort of now in Slovenia. So individuals who experience what we are now talking and describing in one way or the other. So and the proceeds of your donations will go directly to them. So yeah, so this is two. And if there are no more questions, I would like to invite Jack and one more question. Yeah.
Isn't there any precedent in the European Convention on Human Rights application of the law? Because it was clearly made to not allow someone to deport someone and for them to have a process of asylum recognition. And there must have been also reasons that we didn't do this before, ignore asylum applications, and there must be some kind of precedent before it in legal law. I don't know if you know about it or maybe there isn't any.
No, I am sure there is a possibility to initiate proceedings, maybe with also a direct application to the European Court of Human Rights. But what I was trying to explain is that there are many issues, like obstacles of how to build a really good case that could succeed at the court. Because if you bring a case that is not waterproof, you can do more damage than good with the law.
But isn't there already a precedent that some of this happened in Europe?
Yes, there.
A faster track.
Well, there have been cases, especially the most famous one is Hirsi-Ama, which was a case where Italians apprehended a group of migrants stranded at sea, and they then towed their boat, or they put them on the Italian boat and brought them back to Libya, or I think it was Libya or Tunisia, and this was deemed not in compliance with the European Convention. So this was a pushback at sea. But then the European Court changed its praxis a little bit in later cases. There was one case from Meira or Ceuta, the Spanish enclaves in Morocco, where they basically, these are cases of collective expulsion, which is another article, another right in the European Convention, but it is very hard to prove that collective expulsion has happened, because there isn't a right to claim asylum in the convention. There is only a right not to be deported to a place where you might be tortured or ill-treated. So there has to be like specific circumstances to initiate this. So we are actively trying to seek a person who would be this client, and I don't know, I hope we get lucky with this.
And also the legal questions will be part of the next panel. We have a case from Austria who managed the case on this basis, and I think it was judged in favor that the expulsions by Austrian police are not in compliance with the Schengen law. So it was based on European legislature, which might serve as a precedent of sorts too. But I think that will be the point in the next debate, where a member of PET, or a representative from PET will also be. So, any more questions? Okay, then thank you to Infocolpa, and invite the next representative from Border.